As an agronomist in a post-apocalyptic landscape, my primary occupation centered on cultivating and hoarding provisions. It seemed, among the billions inhabiting this planet, I alone possessed a premonition of the deadly zombie virus's impending eruption. As students of agronomy, our only true fear had always been a scarcity of land to farm or enough produce to store. Thus, our earlier lives were spent indulging in fresh salads, succulent barbecues, and bubbling hot pots. Yet, confronted by the menace of raging fires, the lurking shadows of hidden marauders in the corridors, and the terrifying evolution of intelligent undead, the question loomed, would we become the Ark of Salvation in the final days, or merely plump prey awaiting dismemberment? A jolt of panic coursed through me, and I thrashed desperately, seeking an escape, but my limbs felt utterly paralyzed. I glanced back to see a grayish corpse lunging, its blood-stained maw gaping wide as it clamped down on my shoulder. A soft moan escaped my lips. The sensation of tearing flesh lingered on my shoulder, leaving me gasping for air, my heart hammering uncontrollably. Then the realization hit. It was merely a dream within a dream. In that vivid hallucination, the entire globe was engulfed by an unknown zombie virus. Social order disintegrated in a blink. Corpses piled into mountains, and fires blazed across the sky, forging a hell on earth. A profound anxiety seized me, for I possessed the disconcerting ability to foresee the future through my dreams. I had once dreamt of my university exam scores, and the results had been uncannily accurate. I had dreamt of a classmate fracturing her bone, and precisely a week later, she was in a cast. Now, this horrifying vision of the apocalypse had entered my sleep. I hastily checked the calendar on my phone. Less than 6 days remained until the catastrophe would strike. I gently patted my cheek. Outside the window, the unwavering chirping of birds filled the air. I resolved internally, this time, I absolutely must succeed. There's no room for hesitation. I have to bring my parents here. I genuinely fear something unforeseen might happen to them. When the call connected, I heard my father's deep, warm voice. He didn't wait for my response, but immediately handed the phone to my mother. I could picture him, rubbing his nose, standing by, listening intently to our conversation. Feigning distress, I told my mother, "Mom, I fell off my bike. Could you come and look after me for a while?" My mother's voice immediately erupted like gunfire. "How many times have I told you to watch where you're going? Where did you fall? Did you break any bones?" I quickly interrupted her. "The 9 a.m. high-speed train. Remember that, both of you." In the looming apocalypse, electronic devices would be unreliable. I pulled out a thick notebook, mused for a moment, then began listing the tasks for the coming days. The first item was to construct a sturdy, dependable sanctuary. 3 years after graduating with my agronomy degree, I abandoned my specialized field to become a full-time author. Over the past few years, I had sold the copyrights to several novels and was determined to pay the down payment for this large apartment. Of course, due to budget constraints, I had chosen a building in a newly developed area. 10 years ago, it was rural. Now it was still quite secluded. The outward opening anti-theft doors, the card key system with a private elevator for each unit, felt relatively secure. The space inside the apartment and the dedicated mechanical floor offered considerable flexibility. The only access points were the elevator and the emergency exit. As long as they were securely locked, there shouldn't be any major issues. It wasn't that I hadn't considered establishing a multi-tiered system, from the building level to individual units, to unite the residents of all 17 buildings against the disaster. But firstly, they wouldn't believe me. Secondly, during an apocalypse, human nature becomes unpredictable. I lacked the ability and couldn't guarantee that everyone would act in solidarity. I contacted an interior design company to add another layer of railings to the door for enhanced security. The installer, while working, remarked, "Oh, young women today are so security conscious." I surveyed all the glass windows, deciding to replace them entirely with the highest grade protective glass. Additionally, the 10-meter-wide balcony safety net was completely covered. "Are you really going to cover it? No more flowers?" he asked. I glanced at the faded hydrangeas, shaking my head, explaining I no longer had time for their care. Furthermore, most of the remaining glass windows were fitted with one-way film and thick curtains. Although our apartment complex had excellent access control and was on a high floor at such a critical juncture, not a single vulnerability could be exposed. I casually replied, "Yes, exactly. From now on, the safety of my children is paramount." I offered the workers some medicine. At precisely 1:30 p.m., my parents called to say they had arrived. I hurried to meet them. The moment she saw me, my mother dropped her luggage and immediately checked my arms and legs, exhaling in relief when she found nothing amiss. She gently tapped my head. "What kind of trick are you playing now? You're even deceiving your own parents." I looked at them and recounted the content of my prophetic dreams. They remained silent for a moment. They were accustomed to my sixth sense. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice dry. "All right, your father and I support you." A warmth welled up in my nose. Not just when I chose to become an author after graduation, but even now, they continued to stand behind me with unwavering support. They also sent brief, almost commanding messages to relatives, colleagues, and friends, urging them to stockpile food and avoid going out, though they couldn't elaborate. I, too, subtly hinted at the urgency on social media platforms and in my writing updates, advising my readers to stock up and stay indoors if possible. On October 15th, my father proactively supervised the construction work, drawing on his past experience with construction crews. After all, the quality of this particular renovation was paramount, as it literally concerned our family's survival. The speed of our home's transformation exceeded my expectations, taking only 2 days in total. Concurrently, less than 3 days remained until the zombie virus outbreak. I didn't know the exact timing, but for the past few days, we had been preparing almost non-stop. All windows and doors that allowed light and ventilation had been reinforced with steel and bulletproof glass, turning our home into a veritable mini fortress. Over these 2 days, we meticulously planned to maximize the utility of every room and area within our large 160 square meter apartment. Since we had only recently moved in, our larger furniture hadn't arrived yet. We designated a spare bedroom as a resting area, purchasing the most comfortable bed and mattress, for if the outside world brought immense psychological pressure, the quality of our sleep needed to be exceptional. The remaining spaces were dedicated entirely to storage. The flush toilet would no longer be usable, and the frequency of using the squat toilet had to be drastically reduced. The rooftop had been converted into a dry composting toilet, where we had set up nearly 20 large bins for composting. My father, though he said little, had already arranged for soundproofing and power generation. The south-facing windows and the rooftop were equipped with solar panels. He also brought back 80 battery cells from an auto parts market. Each battery seemed small, but when wired together, they would form a substantial energy storage, tens of W, sufficient when combined with other battery types. The kitchen was also equipped with a gas stove and gas cylinders. My mother, satisfied, instructed my father to connect the refrigerator's power supply first to see how it performed over the next few days. She asked me, "Shishi, how many liters is this refrigerator of yours? Do we need to buy a few more?" As a lazy freelancer who was frequently home, the first refrigerator I bought had a capacity of over 700 liters. It wasn't just for storing vegetables and fruits in the freezer and crisper. It also had a dedicated vacuum-sealed area for chilling. It could keep blueberries and strawberries fresh for a month. Just thinking about being able to eat grapes and persimmons during the apocalypse made my mouth water, and I nodded in eager agreement. My father called a water delivery company and pre-ordered 200 5-gallon water bottles, 40 cases of 24-bottle water packs, and 20 large containers of water. We also secured 1.5 liters of olive oil, 5 kilograms of animal butter, 5 liters of whipping cream, yeast, matcha powder, cocoa powder, various grades of flour totaling 30 kilograms, and cheese and cream cheese. We also added 10 kilograms of various beans and grains. My mother promptly held my hand when I reached for more soybeans and green beans. She reminded me you can also use them to grow bean sprouts. She was right. After all, in the past, with just guns and wheat, we had defeated airplanes and cannons. Our staple foods, enough to fill our bellies, were now packaged. We still needed a large quantity of meat, eggs, and milk. A healthy body was essential for self-preservation. I pointed to the pork, chicken, duck, beef, and goat sections, even fish and shrimp, instructing the vendor, "Uncle, I'll take all of these and this too. I don't need organs, they're hard to prepare and no pork hocks. Please help me chop the ribs, chicken, duck, and fish. Yes, like this size." I demonstrated with my hands. We also had a vacuum packaging machine at home. We essentially portioned them into small packages, enough for 3 people per serving, and put them in the freezer. Meat should not be thawed and refrozen, as that would breed bacteria. Though it required extra effort, we had to minimize risks. The vendor looked perplexed, asking, "What are you making, young lady?" "Most people here buy in bulk and leave right away." My mother chuckled naturally, replying in the local dialect, "My daughter runs a catering delivery service. My daughter and I can't cut these ourselves, so we'd appreciate your help." She subtly glanced at me, and I quickly handed over 200 yuan cash as payment. He didn't ask further questions and swiftly processed all the meat. Thus, we acquired 60 kilograms of pork, 30 kilograms of ribs, 50 kilograms of beef, 30 processed chickens and ducks, 15 packages of frozen cod and sea bass, and 150 chicken eggs. Due to their limited shelf life, various hot pot ingredients like crab sticks, beef balls, and shrimp balls were also bagged in large quantities. Sausages, bacon, and smoked ribs, 30 kilograms of each. For meat preparation, essential spices were indispensable. Salt, soy sauce, oyster sauce, 5-spice powder, braising spice packets, grilling salt powder, black pepper sauce, and small chili peppers, all of which could be stored for a long time in the freezer. Garlic and ginger could also be used to make ginger sugar water. We bought everything in large quantities. Considering the freezer's capacity, the remaining meat was purchased in canned form, 6 cans of canned meat and 40 cans of canned fish. Our home already had an oven and an air fryer. Now I added several more compact air fryers, a few smokeless charcoal grills, a wood-burning stove, an induction cooker, and a juicer. With the meat packaged, a significant sense of security settled within me. But at that very moment, another thought surfaced. Would simply staying fortified at home truly keep us safe? If we were forced to evacuate, long-lasting compressed biscuits and dried foods needed to be ready and within a portable weight limit. I promptly retrieved 20 kilograms of compressed biscuits. My mother, possessing more life experience, had us split up after we finished buying the meat. She headed to the produce and fruit sections as well as the snacks and beverages. I genuinely couldn't hold back. 20 cartons of 250 milliliters boxed milk, 10 large bottles each of Wengdai milk, Assam milk tea, and Happy Fatty soda, 40 pouches of yogurt. Due to expiration dates, I took 8 cartons of peach-flavored yogurt, 20 cartons of almonds for daily consumption, 50 cartons of quail eggs and hard-boiled eggs, egg tarts, peach pastries, rice cakes, totaling 50 cartons, granulated sugar, honey, apricot-flavored melon seeds, original sunflower seeds, honey-soaked dried fruits, some Snickers chocolate bars, and various high-calorie foods. I moved 2 cartons of each. My father enjoyed tea, so I took 10 tea cakes. My mother liked jasmine tea, and I secretly added 10 boxes of rose and jasmine tea. In the apocalypse, maintaining blood sugar levels was crucial. Trust me, you absolutely wouldn't want to experience hypoglycemia in certain situations, like crouching to observe the zombies downstairs or fleeing for your life. After the delivery workers left, I headed to the fruit section, intending to commend my mother's achievements. My mother, calculating as she spoke, introduced me to her haul. We have a fresh vegetable crisper that can last for a week or 2. Other items like eggplant, cucumber, and green beans can also last for about a week. She swept all the mustard greens, kale, and cabbage off the fresh produce shelves. We'll eat these first, the rest will be washed, chopped, and frozen. Next were the easily storable root vegetables, essential for long-term survival. My mother was quite generous. Potatoes, pumpkins, carrots, white radishes, taro, onions, sweet potatoes, and winter melon, 40 kilograms of each. She also bought 30 kilograms each of dried mushrooms, seaweed, dried tofu, and mint mushrooms. When I was little at my grandmother's house, pumpkins could last for a month under the bed. The same went for winter melon. You just cut off what you needed. While fresh vegetables provided essential vitamins, relying solely on stored produce wouldn't last indefinitely. Green onions could be grown hydroponically. We could cut one batch and then regrow them. For fruits, I prioritized long-lasting varieties like apples, oranges, and tangerines. There were also air-freighted coconuts, winter red apples, grapefruits, and pomegranates. I also picked up about 7 or 8 small boxes of greenhouse-grown blueberries and strawberries. These vegetables still needed processing at home. Frozen foods required blanching, and others needed proper packaging. My father had just called to say the freezers were full. My mother settled the bill. She called 2 batches of transporters, and all the outer packaging was cardboard boxes. Shishi, let's go. I started to move, then turned back, smiling. Mom, actually, when I graduated from Agricultural University, I excelled. My mother chuckled. Oh, I had 4 years of theoretical and field experimentation, so I'm sure I can handle household gardening. If not, just shout, Mom. Post-apocalyptic household gardening needs to consider many more factors. The rooftop could be used for planting, but for secrecy, climbing vines like peas, green beans, cucumbers, and loofahs were easily detectable, so we discarded them. Moreover, it was best to choose disease and insect-resistant varieties. After consulting with my mother, we decided to prepare 50 planting containers in grow bags, sterile soil, and sheep manure mixed for basic plant fertilizer, along with other common fertilizers. Carrots, fresh greens, water spinach, kale, and a type of weed called Baixiang Chow would become new members of our family. This weed had cooling and diuretic properties. Additionally, in the crevices we would sow coriander seeds. Seeds for other seasons were also prepared to shorten the harvest time. I had prepared vegetables that could be propagated by cuttings. The fastest ones could be harvested in just 1 month. After these arduous tasks were completed, night had fallen. Because the packing and loading had changed the original packaging, when the delivery workers were moving things, a couple returning from their stroll remarked, smiling, "Just starting to move in. The residents below us on the 13th floor have a baby and a golden retriever." My mother nodded. "That's right. There's still a bit of a smell in the house. After we finish packing, our whole family will go out to stay elsewhere to avoid inhaling formaldehyde, which causes cancer." Don't blame us for not telling the truth. It's just that when that day comes, the survivors in this area might be even more terrifying than the zombies. Upon returning home, my mother told me to quickly shower and rest, while my father would process the meat ingredients. My father meticulously organized all the provisions. After showering, seeing them busy in the kitchen, I couldn't simply sit idle. Picking up a small gardening shovel, I began tending to the balcony planting area. Seeds were best soaked overnight for higher germination rates. To ensure loose, airy soil, I also mixed in some clay and a bit of cocoa coir. If precision wasn't paramount, seeds could be sown directly, but in the initial stage, using seed trays would double the efficiency. Once done, I opened my author management page and explained that updates for this particular work might be paused for an extended period, advising readers not to stay up late waiting. Compared to receiving threatening letters and negative reviews from readers, I prioritized protecting my family of 3. Opinions in the comments section were divided, so I reminded everyone that the epidemic might resurface and advised them to stock up on more supplies. Time slipped by, and before I knew it, it was midnight. With heavy thoughts, we drifted into sleep. I vaguely gazed at the faint moonlight, then succumbed to dreams. The final day of the countdown had arrived. We still had quite a few things left to prepare: clothes, emergency food, medicine, and even backpacks, ready for a potential evacuation. Clothes were easy. Beauty didn't matter. 100 sets of underwear per person, 10 sets of raincoats, rain boots, 15 down jackets, 10 pairs of long, interchangeable pants. Other changing clothes were simply chosen at random. 10 sets of bedding were also packed. Through some connections, we managed to acquire a few boxes of medical supplies. My father excelled at his medical task. Besides fever reducers, anti-diarrhea medication, pain relievers for stomach aches, headaches, dizziness, bandages, and disinfectants, he also secured a substantial amount of vitamins and antibiotics. Quite a lot, actually. I glanced through it and found some herbal remedies for regulating the body, like motherwort and ibuprofen for women. He still remembered me throwing up at home due to period pain in middle school. I gasped, "Heh, we haven't even gotten enough sanitary supplies yet!" We quickly grabbed 200 rolls of toilet paper and 300 rolls of trash bags. Although we couldn't dispose of waste downstairs, we absolutely couldn't let bacteria proliferate inside the house. 100 bars of soap, 100 bottles of laundry detergent, 50 bottles of body wash, 30 bottles of shampoo. We chose various types of sanitary pads, totaling 150 packs. To conserve precious water, we all shaved our heads for ease. We also had 200 bottles of 84 disinfectant solution, 150 bottles of alcohol, masks, protective gloves, and even full protective suits ready. My father also ordered some home exercise equipment. As for me, I downloaded countless ebooks, from dense classics to writing guides. My mother used an enormous hard drive to store all sorts of TV series, movies, and entertainment programs. We also purchased 10 walkie-talkies and radios. In this current flowing existence, if we were stranded on a desert island with nothing to do, our spirits would surely collapse. I looked at the overflowing boxes and carts, and a sense of calm immediately settled over me. But there was still one problem to consider. What if our house was attacked? What if we were forced to leave? I believed in the strength of the nation, but unexpected situations could always arise. Fire, human-caused disaster, viruses other than zombies. Zombies and bad people had countless chances to err, but we only had one opportunity. Parents, we need a plan B, I said gravely. We need to escape. We can't just sit and wait. If we're forced to break out, we'll surely head for the rural suburbs. I furrowed my brow in speculation. The river system in Xiang province is highly developed. With many islands, there must be a suitable refuge. We were all city dwellers with no land in the villages, so we could only choose the building as our sanctuary. My father immediately understood. When he returned home, he had added a portable gas stove, an alcohol stove, lighters, windproof candles, emergency survival blankets, and 9 paper maps of the city and province. He watched a lot of military news and was better at researching these things than we were. He analyzed them for us, predicting the most probable refuge locations. Drones and telescopes were essential tools for gathering more information. Next, we had to plan the specific escape route from the residential area. Our home was on the 17th floor. If we had to climb, physical fitness was a prerequisite. For transportation, we finally decided to rent an SUV and a nimble motorcycle. The day the zombie apocalypse erupted in my dream finally arrived. Just past midnight, my father had already locked the fire escape gates on the lower floors of the building, installed hidden cameras, and placed numerous one-way movable obstacles in the hallway. But I still couldn't sleep. At 7 a.m., the whole family pretended to be calm, got up, washed our faces, ate egg sandwiches, and sat down to intently watch the news. There was no major news, just brief commentaries on recent political turmoil. The apartment complex slowly woke up, office workers went to work as usual, and a few children played in the playground. The more peaceful and cheerful the scene outside, with nothing unusual, the more anxious I felt. The unknown was like a sword hanging over my head. I pressed my hand to my temple, continuing to monitor the news. Parents, don't go out. At noon, the news segment focused on the epidemic, regularly confirming 19,684 new infections nationwide. The anchor continued reading the report. After lunch, I felt exhausted and fell asleep. That afternoon, I received numerous notifications on Winbo, with many readers wondering why I had decided not to go out that day. As the day drew to a close, there was no major activity on social media platforms, mostly just entertainment news. After experiencing the pandemic, I understood how reassuring it could feel when entertainment news dominated the headlines. But nearing midnight, a hot topic began to climb higher in the search rankings. In some areas, inexplicable headaches and vomiting were appearing. From Hubei, was fine this morning, but developed a headache after coming back from shopping at noon. From Jiangxi, my mom too, no cold symptoms, just a headache. From Sichuan, what is this? The next day, the National Health Commission responded that they had begun investigating whether it was a variant of the COVID-19 virus, and the investigation was ongoing. I was startled. The clinical reactions were headaches and vomiting. If it were a fever, one could be isolated. But what about a headache? Just take cold medicine and rest. Did this not mean that virus carriers would infiltrate every industry and area? Even police and firefighters, if just one person was infected, the consequences would be unimaginable. I fearfully hugged my mother. In this grand disaster, I could bear no burden. I could only secretly count myself incredibly fortunate. Very quickly, videos from various places began to spread. The most liked video, judging by the accent, seemed to be from Hubei. In a supermarket, a young boy suddenly collapsed, convulsing, his face pale. His family frantically called security and the emergency number 120. The video showed a crowd gathering, many holding up their phones to record. When medical personnel approached to examine the boy, he bit down hard on the nurse's wrist. The nurse shrieked and quickly retreated. The boy's mother hastily pushed her away, saying her child was small and didn't understand. As a result, the boy also bit the doctor's hand. The camera zoomed in on the boy's slightly bulging eyes, blood stains at the corners of his mouth, and rapid breathing. Even stranger was that the boy had no external force acting on him. He simply arched his back and stood up from the floor. His hands remained stiff as he moaned, mouth agape, and lunged at the crowd. The bitten doctor quickly struggled free, his hand torn and bleeding slightly. The boy was clearly agitated, as if insane, and lunged at the doctor again. From behind the phone screen, the cameraman cursed, "Motherfucker," then quickly fled. The camera's image blurred. The comment section was mostly mocking. Is he possessed? Mentally ill? Nervous excitement? Is the OP okay? Probably fine. If something happened, there wouldn't be a video posted. Acting? Don't spread rumors. Don't spread fake news. Thank you. A few hours later, this video disappeared. I felt suffocated, unable to breathe, my heart aching. The virus had erupted abruptly from its incubation period. I remained hidden in the window crack, observing. At 6 p.m., many people were returning home from work. A man in the apartment complex, head bowed, was talking on his phone when it suddenly dropped to the ground. He collapsed heavily, his body trembling and convulsing, opaque fluid oozing from his mouth and nose. An elderly woman hesitated for a moment, then approached, perhaps intending to ask if he needed help. But the man suddenly flipped over, seized the old woman, and bit and tore at her ferociously. The old woman had no time to cry for help before she was attacked. The ground quickly became stained with blood, limbs brutally torn apart. Even from such a distance, I could smell the sickening, metallic stench of blood. I shakily dialed the police. "Someone is attacking residents in Guijin residential area. Please hurry." My ears only registered static. No one answered, and the call was disconnected. Both the fire department and emergency services were busy. I clutched the phone, not knowing what to do. Had such a small city already lost widespread control? The old woman was out looking after her grandchild. The child screamed in terror. The zombie had already torn half of her apart, its mouth bloody, its finger pointing towards the child. I knew I wasn't a savior. I couldn't rush out to help. But seeing him being eaten alive like that, a figure indeed dashed past quickly, scooped up the child, and ran into the building. The body slammed heavily against the anti-theft door. I only caught a glimpse of the young man's vivid, wolf-like red hair. Half an hour later, all channels broadcasted the news. WBO was inundated with sensational headlines. It was reported that numerous locations had experienced outbreaks of unknown attacks. Patients exhibited biting, scratching, and violent assault. The investigation was ongoing. The government recommended halting work and closing schools. Citizens were asked to comply with community arrangements and quarantine at home, awaiting rescue. Professor Lee, a renowned epidemiologist, was invited to explain this new disease. My parents stood in stunned silence, gazing at the horrific scene downstairs. They sighed regretfully, then turned and embraced me, full of anxiety. "Don't look anymore. We must survive." My mother, who had been strong her entire life, spoke in a strangely soft voice at that moment. My whole body felt cold. Only when I touched the warm backs of my parents did I feel a semblance of reality. We must survive. My phone vibrated continuously. The city and community epidemic prevention command centers quickly began implementing measures, urging everyone to prepare supplies and not go out unless absolutely necessary. Outside, zombies clung to lampposts, wandering aimlessly. Forget about not going out unless necessary. Even if it were essential, no one dared to. The WeChat group for Xingfu Guijin residential area constantly buzzed with notifications. Everyone was extremely worried. Emotions spread rapidly through social media. The authorities had not yet named this virus, temporarily calling it the zombie virus as it was termed online. Lamentations filled the group. Damn it! Is anyone coming to save us? All they say is wait, wait, wait. Can human lives wait? What do we eat if we don't go out? My family has pets. We can only quarantine for a maximum of 10 days. In 10 days, we'll have no money, only our lives left. My family even has a diabetic. Community staff continuously tried to reassure everyone. Please calm down, residents. Trust in the city's guidance. If the city can't handle it, there's still the province. We have the nation to protect us. Many residents with small national flags next to their names joined in to praise these words. My mother stroked my head. It's dinner time. Don't watch anymore. I took a few deep breaths, patted my face. Let me cook dinner tonight. For the past 2 days, our family hadn't turned on the main lights. Beneath the double-layered thick curtains, only a small table lamp glowed, its warm, faint yellow light illuminating a small corner of our living room. My father, with a furrowed brow, continued watching the news. Witnessing such blood and violence, I truly needed to find something to divert my attention. My mother, as always, was meticulously careful. All food ingredients were arranged by expiration date, clearly labeled. Those with shorter shelf lives were placed at the front. For these few days, we ate light meals and couldn't use the range hood. I took out frozen shrimp, some vegetables, and clam meat, intending to make a pot of seafood noodles. The noodles were fresh. I cooked them to about 80 to 90% doneness and set them aside. The vegetables were blanched as well. Normally, I would surely peel the shrimp, but now doing so would create waste, so I pouted and accepted my fate. I fried the shrimp heads to extract shrimp oil. Minced ginger and small chili peppers were stir-fried until fragrant, then the clam meat was added and sautéed a few times. Boiling water poured into the pot, emitting a sizzling sound. I sprinkled in seafood seasoning, it was supposed to be a soup, added green onions, and then the noodles, letting them soak up the flavor. My mother turned on the air purifier. My father also put down his phone and drew closer. My parents were always worried I wouldn't know how to cook and would starve to death. I deliberately chose a plate with an adorable cartoon Doraemon design. The tension in the house finally eased. I gently glared at them. Please, I've lived alone for years. But perhaps, in my parents' hearts, I would always be the child who took the train home every weekend just to lie around and eat. Actually, I wasn't that lazy. All right, no more talking. Eat. Try our Shishi's cooking. It must be something special. I cheekily leaned close to my mother, smiling. Shishi's noodles are chewy, the shrimp is crispy, and the broth is sweet. Delicious and easy to drink. My father's unexpected remark made me giggle loudly, but seeing my mother's signal to be quiet, I could only cover my mouth and suppress my laughter. Why were they suddenly so serious? The hot noodles warmed my stomach and my entire body. If it weren't for the apocalypse with zombies and disease outbreaks, this would surely have been a wonderfully cozy, ordinary evening. On the second day after the zombie outbreak, water, electricity, and internet were still functioning normally. Even news reporters were on the front lines. But the disaster sent shivers down everyone's spines. From the news footage, seemingly filmed from a helicopter, a multi-car pileup had occurred on the highway, trapping everyone on the road, where they were attacked by zombies. People thrown from their cars lay on the ground. They reached out towards their vehicles, but in the next second, they were surrounded by a group of zombies. They surged forward in layers, not just biting, but biting incredibly fast. In less than 3 minutes, only unrecognizable scraps of flesh remained. Blood and organs stained the zombies' bodies. I immediately spit out the water in my mouth. The live video was instantly blurred. Zombies tracked human breath, besieging car after car. A horde of hundreds of zombies even managed to overturn small vehicles. Some people immediately abandoned their cars and fled. A woman, clutching her child, ran out, but ultimately they were surrounded by zombies. The cries ceased. The situation in other countries was equally grim. Shootings, bombings. Their governments were still unable to maintain order. This was a global catastrophe. Through my observations and summaries from netizens, we drew several conclusions. Zombified individuals were not dead. It was as if they were controlled by an invisible hand. Thus, They instinctively sought fresh flesh and fresh blood for energy. It was estimated that in the early stages, 70% of the world's population had been infected with the zombie virus. The zombie virus spread through saliva, bodily fluids, and could even be contracted from a mere scratch. The only way to kill them was to completely destroy the brain. Fire was also effective. They moved slowly at night. Some zombies had slightly green skin, suggesting a possibility that they drew energy from sunlight. Not everyone would turn into a zombie. A small portion of people would die directly and be eaten. The majority would be assimilated. Zombies were creatures with extremely sensitive senses. Their hearing and smell were far more acute than humans. Some zombies were very strong. Other findings would be added later. If we didn't train our bodies rigorously, we truly might not be able to run. My father practiced daily with a crowbar. He said he wanted to build muscle memory, to be able to deliver a decisive blow. My mother and I did light aerobic exercises. We had to maintain our physical condition, but couldn't overexert ourselves to avoid expending too much energy. Life is truly difficult. Oh, I heard my mother sigh softly. What's wrong? I asked. Check the WeChat group. To save power, our family of 3 shared one phone. The chat group was already buzzing. A woman with a selfie as her profile picture posted, "Which family locked the anti-theft door on the first floor of Building 16? Please open it. My child is at boarding school, and the teachers just announced the school can't hold out anymore. I have to go pick her up." Are you crazy? Opening the door means killing all of us, someone retorted. Are you sure your actions won't affect us? Another questioned. Sister, please, your daughter's life is a life, but ours not. My heart tightened. I unconsciously gripped my mother's hand. Her hand was cold too. The woman continued to plead, "Please everyone, open the door. I'll go out quickly. It won't affect anyone." But the person who locked the door remained silent. Zombies seem to move slower at night. Why don't you wait until then? Someone suggested. I can't wait. The mother sent a voice message. Her voice choked as she begged everyone to open the door. I thought rescue efforts would prioritize schools. It's all my fault. I sent her to boarding school. She's too young. I have to be with her. Please, everyone. There are things you can't understand unless you're a parent. She probably knew it was futile to go, but thinking of her child in a strange place, surrounded by fear, threatened by death, even if it meant sacrificing her own life, she wanted to be with her child immediately and hold her close. In the group, the argument yielded no results. Many spoke up for the mother, and there were also a few students from the boarding school there. They sent out a team invitation. Our car is big. My husband and I will go. We'll pick up the children together. But the person who locked the door remained silent. At this moment, someone in the group spoke with a very different, arrogant tone. Their profile picture was a red wolf. What if the door isn't opened? Break it down. Another cursed, "Damn, are you sick? Damn antisocial personality. Don't come here to harm us. If you want to die, go outside." A resident spoke up. "Everyone, don't get agitated. He's actually very good. He saved my son's life." Indeed, he was the one who that day snatched the child from the zombie's mouth in the complex. Under pressure, the person who locked the door finally appeared, but he spoke very vaguely. "It's not that I don't understand your feelings as a mother, but now we are a collective. I'm also doing this for everyone." The red wolf interjected, "All right, I'll wait and then lock the door myself." The dispute finally subsided. I continued to observe through the binoculars. In the complex of 17 buildings, over 100 zombies wandered. This was what was visible to the naked eye. Most of them were former residents, including security guard Wang. Security guard Wang, usually diligent and kind, had now become a man-eating monster. Perhaps security guard Wang's soul was in the heavens, cursing this corpse, I mused, feeling a pang of sadness. As the woman approached the first floor, 3 to 5 zombies had already gathered before the protective iron gate. They had caught the scent of living humans. The red-haired red wolf seemed to be speaking to the woman, perhaps consoling her. Her panicked expression gradually calmed. It turned out they weren't superheroes. It was only for their children that they forced themselves to be strong. "Hey!" A stout man on the 3rd floor poked his head out, revealing his upper body. his voice hoarse. He even sang a folk tune. "Security guard Wong, we haven't met since the last drinking session. Come find me." These zombies then staggered towards Building 15. Our floor was uninhabited, serving as storage, so residents on the first and second floors were temporarily safe. Residents on other lower floors also opened their windows, shouting loudly, "Mr. Zhang! Miss Liu!" These were the calls of the living, their longing for loved ones, and also an opportunity for the surviving mothers to pick up their children. Seeing a few parents successfully get into their cars and drive away, I breathed a sigh of relief. In the apartment complex's WeChat group, emojis and electronic fireworks were continuously shared. Throughout the entire process, no residents were injured. Only the Red Wolf, I truly didn't know his name, he remained on guard on the first floor, presumably waiting for the woman to pick up her child before opening and relocking the door. That was his promise to the residents of Building 16. My father was on night watch tonight. He urged my mother and me to go to bed quickly. I had no choice but to get into bed. Since middle school, I had lived in dormitories. In college, I moved out of the province. After graduation, I didn't return home, but rented an apartment in Jiangnan City. This seemed to be the first time since becoming an adult that I shared a bed with my mother. My mother still had a pleasant jasmine scent. "What if I turn into one of them, Mom? Would you still love me?" I seemed to be drowsily asking such senseless questions. My mother impatiently pushed the back of my head. "What are you thinking? Don't think such nonsense. What if I turn into a zombie?" My mother said nothing. My eyes felt heavy. In the end, I forgot what my mother said. The next day, I woke up late. My father was already on his small bed. "What happened last night?" I washed my face and ate a boiled egg. Our family still maintained the habit of keeping a diary. Everything that happened from last night to this morning was recorded. Yesterday, only one parent returned, carrying the child's body. My father, an older man, finished speaking, his eyes reddening. The piece of egg in my mouth suddenly became hard to swallow. I asked, was it the person from Building 16? My mother handed me a cup of warm milk, shaking her head regretfully. No. She said that after midnight, others had gathered, driven out, and brought back a lot of supplies. I ate in silence, not knowing what else to say. In these circumstances, humans gradually became desensitized. Their sense of pity slowly eroded away. My mother took the day shift from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. I took over from then until midnight. After confirming that no one and no zombies were in the hallway via our home surveillance system, I bent down, intending to check the rooftop. The rooftop had been renovated with an automatic water filtration system and a rather large planting area. Generally, each type of seed had a different propagation method. Some needed light, some needed low temperatures to germinate, and some needed to avoid light. However, temperature and humidity greatly affected germination, which we needed to pay special attention to. I gently lifted the plastic sheet to ventilate the seeds. It had only been 2 or 3 days, but tiny, hopeful green shoots had already begun to emerge from the black, nutrient-rich soil, delicate yet resilient. This was the first time I felt such tiny green specks were so beautiful. Counting them, the current germination rate had reached 80%. My mood, which had been gloomy for days, finally lifted after seeing these green shoots that I had nurtured myself. Although it was early autumn, the temperature had not yet dropped. The air was filled with the stench of rot and blood. Initially, I had intended to step outside for some fresh air, but I was forced back inside. As I sprayed more water into the seedling tray, a shadow fell over me. It was a police drone. It broadcasted a message through its loudspeaker. "Residents, the disaster is sudden and the nation faces difficulties. Please do not panic. If you are outside, please find shelter immediately. Residents are advised to stay indoors and self-isolate while awaiting rescue. Please rest assured, supplies will be distributed uniformly." The drone patrolled along its designated route, emitting loud sounds, quickly reaching every home. Some zombies downstairs were attracted by the loudspeaker's sound and followed the drone towards the apartment complex gate. But 20 zombies still hadn't moved. They continued to wander around the entrances. My heart pounded. Did they possess some intelligence? It seemed they had learned to wait for prey. After returning home, I immediately shared this thought with my parents. we would focus our observations on zombies exhibiting suspicious behavior in the coming days. On the fourth day of the zombie virus pandemic, water and electricity were cut off. After a faint gurgling sound from the tap, it ran completely dry. I tried to open WeChat to check messages in the group, but only received a red line of text, unable to connect to network. We had prepared in advance, but other residents were not so fortunate. The zombies downstairs continued their relentless moaning day and night at the entrances. But when they got too hungry, they would automatically disperse. If rescue didn't arrive, as long as we survived to the end, we would be the winners. In the early stages of the zombie virus, every family in the apartment complex still had some supplies. The area remained quiet. By night, the apartment complex resembled a dead city without life. I whispered to my parents, "For the next few days, let's reduce our observation frequency to avoid being detected." "All right," my parents replied in hushed tones. A few days later, I felt something was amiss. The entire house gradually became like a steaming cage. Even the walls were scorching hot at midnight. The temperature continued to rise. The thermometer showed it was 42 degrees Celsius outside. In our top floor apartment, due to the building's structure, the room temperature soared to 45 degrees Celsius. The perceived temperature even reached 50 degrees Celsius, so hot it felt almost insane. I wore the thinnest tank top, with ice packs in front of me, fanning myself with a paper fan, and still felt like I needed to pant with my tongue out like a puppy. This is truly murderous. Sweat poured down like a waterfall. I could even feel the rapid streams of sweat on my skin. Though drenched in sweat, we dared not bathe or wash our hair. Each day, we only used a tiny amount of water mixed with a little rose water to wipe ourselves down. We only dared to open the windows a crack at night to let some air in. The plants on the balcony were moved to shaded spots, retaining a sliver of hope. But the seedlings on the rooftop were not so fortunate. The sun, like a sharp blade, easily tore through the sunshade, killing most of the seedlings in their nursery. The entire contingent was wiped out. Witnessing this, I, an agronomy graduate, only wanted to cry tears of furious frustration. I made 3 glasses of iced smoothie the next day, savoring every sip. When food exceeded 20 degrees Celsius, I lost my appetite. I changed my cooking methods, making cold salads. Boiled chicken breast was quickly plunged into ice water to chill, then shredded and mixed with sauce. Every day my mother cooked mung bean porridge, reminding my father and me to drink it on time to cool down. I lay on a cool mat, using a telescope to continue my watch. The continuous high temperatures without a single drop of rain were a fatal blow to the entire community. Humans could survive a week without food, but without water, death came in just 3 days. The high temperatures forced people to venture out in search of water sources. 2 skinny girls, having fashioned makeshift armor from textbooks and clear tape, rushed out. Whether it was something they had applied to themselves or not, the zombies didn't immediately pursue them. Others followed suit. A man was knocked down by a zombie that lunged from a street corner. A step too slow, he screamed at the girls, "Save me!" The 2 girls who had rushed out first did not turn back. The screams attracted more zombies, who began to tear at his body parts. The man shrieked in agony, writhing in the apartment complex. Seizing the moment, the 2 girls quickly climbed into a car and sped towards the least zombie-infested complex gate, bursting out. At night, with limited visibility, how could humans compare to zombies? Those who followed were not so lucky, one by one overtaken by zombies. Cries and screams echoed non-stop. I frantically put down the binoculars, daring not to look anymore, covering my ears. I told myself I would tell my parents in the morning. In this world, only the decisive and tough would survive. The terrifying heat wave lasted about a month before temperatures slowly began to drop. When the first clap of thunder echoed in the sky, I joyfully sprang awake from my sleep. My father was still observing every movement outside from the window. Seeing me wake up, he frowned slightly. Soon the sound of rain grew louder and louder. Raindrops pattered against the glass. Our rooftop had an automatic water filtration system, but even after this rain, we still had to bring the empty water barrels outside, placing them under the eaves. Amidst the strong wind and dark storm, occasionally a few apartment windows opened, silently placing pots, basins, and dishes outside. Some had succumbed to the scorching heat, others had quietly departed. Within the homes, there were also those who had ultimately survived, enduring the harsh period to embrace the redeeming rain. What delighted me was the continued sound of ping pong from the young couple's apartment on the 13th floor. And the Red Wolf's hair in the opposite building remained unchanged, still that killer hairstyle. As long as humanity persisted, agriculture would endure. On the 47th day of the zombie outbreak, after confirming stable temperatures, I refused to give up and began my second attempt at planting. With experience from the previous attempt, this time the seedlings grew much faster, each seeming to compete with the other. The wilted plants on the balcony, thanks to the increased humidity, gradually recovered. The small hydroponic green onions were quickly harvested in a large bunch. Because the residential population in the complex had drastically decreased, with only a few families remaining, and those being experienced survivors, the accident rate truly dropped significantly. We didn't have to face gore and filth. The sky, after the rain, was incredibly blue, and the clouds were fluffier. My mood naturally improved a little. My parents and I decided to reward ourselves after overcoming the initial phase. After all, before this, with parched throats and chapped lips, I didn't dare to drink much water, surviving only by sheer willpower. Just a few simple dishes, my mother said, steaming pumpkin with red dates, stir-frying beef, and adding some fresh vegetables. I went to rinse the rice, just lightly, then poured the rice water into a fermentation bin, intending to use it later to water the vegetables. Hot rice, eaten with beef broth, brought an overwhelming sense of happiness. I ate a bowl and a half of rice. After eating, my parents and I sat together chatting for a while, then I went on my next watch shift. Knowing my parents were by my side, I felt incredibly secure. I watched for a while, then turned to see my mother happily watching an entertainment program while my father studied books. Putting on my glasses, I no longer allowed myself to be distracted, opening my eyes wide to observe. Although the number of zombies in the complex had decreased, they seemed much healthier. Even stranger, in the bushes, a zombie lay on the ground, its body twitching unnaturally. I tried to get a clearer look, but the sight before me terrified me. A zombie was eating another zombie. More accurately, the zombie that appeared stronger was devouring the weaker one. Through my telescope, the zombie raised its head, its gray-white eyes staring directly at me. I immediately dropped my hand and pulled the curtain down. My mother was the first to notice something was wrong with me. She came over and hugged me. She wanted to open the curtain to look outside, but I quickly grabbed her hand, cold sweat pouring down. "Don't!" Just then, when I looked directly at the zombie, my heart rate had skyrocketed. After a moment, I finally spoke. "These zombies are cannibalizing their own kind. They're following the law of the strong, preying on the weak." Did this also mean that, over time, the virus within them would evolve and mutate? Would the surviving zombies eventually be the strongest ones? Even more terrifying, what if some of these zombies possessed intelligence? My hands couldn't stop trembling. So, are we fortified in our tiny fortress, truly Noah's Ark amidst the flood, or just plump meat in the mouths of other survivors, or even the food source for intelligent zombies? After about 10 minutes, I bravely pulled back a corner of the curtain again, though I had, of course, changed positions. I had a clear image of that zombie's form in my mind, but after searching for a while, I couldn't find it anymore. After careful consideration, I shared my ideas in a family meeting. But surprisingly, everyone was very optimistic. Currently, we are on the defensive, and they are on the offensive. If that time comes, we will think of a way together. Can the three of us not overcome one gifted individual? We changed our patrol formation, splitting into pairs. My father and I would take on additional watch times. Each night, under my mother's supervision, I would secretly go up to the rooftop. The small carrots grew very quickly. The plants were denser than I had imagined. I had to thin them out. Thinning involved removing weak or poorly growing plants. I mixed rainwater with fruit peel compost, applying a thin, frequent fertilizer solution to supplement the vegetable plant's nutrition. It had been over a month since the zombie outbreak, and fresh vegetables were all consumed. Now every day we could only cook frozen vegetables, which, though not as tasty, were acceptable. I only hoped my small plots could continue to yield harvests. I had picked quite a bit of lettuce and a few sprigs of coriander and green onions. We prepared a family-style barbecue. Thinly sliced pork belly and thinly sliced marinated beef were laid on the grill. A sizzling sound emerged, then we dipped it in a little barbecue seasoning and finally wrapped it in lettuce for a delicious bite. The meat juices overflowed in my mouth, the crisp sweetness of the lettuce blending with the fatty meat. Even now, thinking about it makes my mouth water. I imagined all sorts of vegetables ripening and me happily taking a basket to harvest them. But then, suspicious sounds echoed from the stairwell, like something heavy falling down the stairs, the sound reverberating. I held my breath, clutching the bunch of green onions in my hand. Everyone quietly returned inside. My father stood outside, my mother inside the house. We had installed hidden cameras in the hallway from the 17th floor down to the 15th. We also had a view of the first floor. On the camera screen, from an odd angle, a pair of feet appeared. We rewound the first floor surveillance video. The anti-theft door was only loosely latched, but it was indeed still closed. So those feet weren't a zombies, were they? Why was I hesitating? Because I had once witnessed someone returning home wounded after scavenging, who then turned into a zombie inside their home, forcing their family to flee to the balcony, ultimately falling to their deaths in panic. Before they fell, many zombies had gathered below, reaching up with open mouths. And that zombie was pacing back and forth on the floor, finally approaching the first floor and pushing the anti-theft door open from the inside. All three of us held our breath. I felt anxious. Would we be discovered? If discovered, how would we deal with them? My parents had installed obstacles on the 15th floor. If they entered through the fire door, it would take them quite a while to open it. Moreover, the 16th floor also had obstacles. My father reassured us, but his eyes had already shifted to the sticks and iron bars near the door. "Brother, the house upstairs has been empty for a long time. No one's there now." "Do you remember all the residents?" The woman's voice was very soft, the man's deep and coarse. I recognized them as the couple from the 13th floor. "Didn't we loot?" She paused for a moment. "Took some stuff? Let's go home tonight." I forgot to introduce him. Her husband was a muscular man with tattooed arms, a gym trainer. His chest could suffocate me every time I saw him. I only dared to look at the woman. Their conversation truly made one ponder. Looting. A metallic clatter echoed loudly. I recognized it as a sharp fire axe. "Let's go. The remaining food will run out in a few days." The woman's faint voice sounded even more melancholic. Finally, the fire axe was dragged away, and we sat before the screen, our limbs numb. If I wasn't mistaken, this couple on the 13th floor had survived until now, besides their prior stockpiling, because they had been looting other residents in the building. On the 5th floor were an elderly couple. On the 6th were students. Their belongings were all gone. How much longer could humans survive? I remembered that since the zombie outbreak, I hadn't heard any dog barking anymore. They had a golden retriever. If they disregarded seeking items outside because of their infant with its weak immune system, and instead checked every house in Building 17, they would surely come for us. We didn't want conflict. Direct conflict would lead to casualties. Even if we shared supplies to make peace, who could guarantee they would stop there? Who knew when the disaster would end? My father still tried to lift our spirits. Surely only the man has combat capability. My heart wept silently. A muscular, experienced man wielding a fire axe, looting all the residents' belongings in the building, leaving only our home. If that sister hadn't seen us moving things that day and persuaded her husband to leave, we surely would have encountered them tonight. Finally, after discussion, we decided on the following plan. The 15th floor had an obstacle with a large lock. By the time they broke through 2 layers of doors, their strength would be weakened. We would then use that moment to set a trap and ambush them. Even when I was on watch, I had to hold a small knife in my hand to feel a modicum of peace. These days, in my dreams, I only saw myself being robbed by the muscular, tattooed man. He was intelligent. He realized our setup and went directly to the 17th floor. Our house door was easily broken by the enormous fire axe. Negotiations failed. They wanted to take over our home. They wanted to kill all of us. My father gripped his pants leg, his mouth full of blood, shouting, "Run! Hurry!" Ah! Waking up in the middle of the night, I couldn't sleep anymore. Subsequent observations showed someone wearing a black raincoat stealthily going out at night. Under pressure, all three of us had heavy dark circles under our eyes. 7 days later, I stared at the surveillance screen with tired, strained eyes. The woman's bare feet reappeared, hurrying frantically. She ran wildly forward, up 1 floor, 2 floors, finally stopping at the junction between the 16th and 17th floors. She must have seen the obstacle our family had placed. It was a large barrier spanning the entire width of the hallway, with sharp spikes pointing out. We had been discovered. My parents immediately grabbed their weapons. My father held a crowbar, my mother an electric baton. I was glued to the surveillance screen. Her child was strapped to her back. Her hands continuously rattled the iron barrier. She screamed, "Shishi, shishi! You're home, aren't you? I know you're home. Help me. Can you save my child?" She frowned, her face contorted with tears and snot. "Can you let me in? I have nowhere else to go." From her fragmented, emotionally shattered words, I could piece together the story. She had persuaded her husband that all supplies in this building were exhausted, so they had risked going outside to scavenge. Because the child was too young to be separated from its mother, the woman stayed home to watch the baby while the man went out to search. But something unknown happened. The man became infected with the virus. When he began showing symptoms of convulsions and headache, the woman locked the room door and ran out. However, this man was very strong. He had broken down the room door, trying to get out. Outside, thousands of zombies surrounded them, while inside her husband, now a zombie, sought her life. She didn't dare take the child outside, so she had to go upstairs to seek our help. She looked at the camera we had installed, facing the lens, sobbing uncontrollably, occasionally glancing anxiously downstairs. "Shishi, can you open the door? Please!" I clenched my jaw, not reacting, but internally, I was truly struggling. She was gentle by nature, often greeting me proactively. But now, she and her husband, along with a child who couldn't move on its own and could cry at any moment, creating danger, would clearly impose immense pressure on our survival. She continued to plead, "We truly have nowhere else to go. We're so hungry there's no milk for the baby anymore. Otherwise, we wouldn't." She seemed to be recalling a painful scene, crying soundlessly and kneeling on the ground. It seemed the looting of other residents had left her feeling incredibly guilty. "Let me in. I'll do anything you want." At the same time, the camera downstairs showed the muscular zombie grunting, advancing step by step. It moved heavily, as if intending to crush the staircase. Even if we let this woman in, such a terrifying threat still remained to be dealt with. I gripped my hair in anguish, closing my eyes. At this moment, the woman suddenly fell silent. She knelt, placed the child at the door, and covered it with her clothes. She said calmly, "He's almost here." I gripped the short sword in my hand. Was she trying to threaten us? Although her husband was the perpetrator of the vicious looting, she benefited from it and had even threatened our lives. I bit my lower lip, tasting blood in my mouth. The muscular zombie was truly terrifying. Its eyes rolled back, muscles pathologically bulging, saliva drooling. She only turned to look at the child, then at the surveillance camera. What surprised us was that she seemed to smile faintly. She leaped onto the window, half her body hanging out, her feet pointed towards the muscular zombie. The zombie lunged, biting ferociously. She continued to lean out. The large man quickly began to lose his balance. Finally, the camera showed the muscular zombie disappearing at the corner of the window. Outside, the sound of a heavy fall echoed. My parents and I remained silent for a long time. The child behind the iron gate remained motionless, not crying. "Shishi." I covered my face, taking a deep breath. I vote not to get involved. My parents decided to go. We had initially promised to have a democratic vote when faced with difficult decisions. My mother quickly carried the child back. She lifted his shirt. He was only a 5-month-old boy. To be honest, if not for the lack of milk and food, he surely wouldn't have been so thin and jaundiced. In a way, the threat had been resolved, and we had once again overcome it. But when I stood up, my vision blurred, my legs lost strength, and I collapsed to the ground. Today marked the 62nd day since the zombie outbreak. I was no saint. I didn't possess the kindness to save everyone, nor did I regret my decision. I simply felt incredibly exhausted. My mother brewed me a cup of honey water, hugged me, and said, "Go rest. Your father and I will keep watch." I forced a weak smile and went back to my room, hugging my pillow as I drifted off to sleep. When I woke up, it was probably around 6 p.m. My mother had finished preparing dinner. Tonight, we had rich, warm pork congee with century eggs. As for the little boy we had picked up, my mother had given him a little rice water and then prepared some milk for him. The milk was something I had intended to use for baking to add a milky flavor, but that wouldn't be happening now. "When you were little, you were as thin as a monkey," my mother said, cradling the small boy skillfully. "I never imagined you'd grow up like this. I always dreamed of holding other children besides you, she." My mother said, her eyes full of hidden meaning, "I didn't expect it to come true so soon." "Isn't that a bit much, Mom? You have to consider the circumstances before nagging about marriage." The little boy was very satisfied with our meal, his tummy full and round after eating. Then he began babbling happily. "Oh, by the way, what's his name?" my father suddenly asked. That question put me on the spot. His mother must have told me once, but I had forgotten. "How about calling him Wang Zi?" I glanced at a can of Wang Zi milk. Wang is good. That name is good. Paired with she, it becomes hope. Our family's hope. Yes, our family of 4 would have a bright future. Perhaps that was also a characteristic Chinese romanticism. As long as the heart reached for the light, hope would be found everywhere. The following days were quite peaceful. My vegetables grew continuously, ready for harvest at any time. The temperature gradually dropped. Every morning, I went up to the roof, touching the cool vegetable leaves. Vegetables like cabbage became even sweeter after a frost. Each time, I only picked a few leaves, leaving 3 or 4 for the plant to continue growing. Wang also grew bigger and finally put on some weight. The only thing was that I couldn't have the same patience and love as his parents. Now, occasionally, I still continued to outline my novel, writing it down on paper. When I had free time, I would playfully wiggle his tiny toes. Every day, we still kept the radio on, checking for signals. The good news was that on the 78th day after the zombie outbreak, there was occasional information on the radio. This indicated that survivors had begun to gather, and there were even official channels. The bad news was that this was a command channel for zombie-resistant shelters, providing live reports from the front lines. According to valid data, zombies would form waves of corpses advancing towards a certain target. We are now announcing the coordinates of the concentrated zombie groups. Surviving residents are advised to proactively stay away. Coordinates 112 degrees east longitude, 28 degrees north latitude. Coordinates 115 degrees east longitude, 41 degrees north latitude. One of the coordinates wasn't too far from us. In the coming days, we would have to deploy our drone to scout. If it entered our area, even though we had quite a bit of supplies, we would have to go out and find shelter. After observing for a long time, we realized that only about 2 households had survived in the apartment complex. During the day, our drone would fly around the area. When it flew close to the ground, zombies would curiously look up and gather. We exploited this characteristic to lure many zombies away. From the drone's perspective, we saw burnt-out buildings, shattered glass from pharmacies and supermarkets, tattered rags wrapped around human forms on the asphalt. In the school, small zombies wandered. Just 3 months ago, our city was striving to build a civilized city. We continued to expand our observation range. Each observation left me dizzy. The first 3 days were quite calm, but on the 4th day, at the edge of the area, we truly observed a zombie wave of about 800. They gathered into a gray-green wall of corpses. During the day, they moved very quickly, while at night they moved slower. Along the way, other zombies continued to join them, seemingly unaware, collapsing many makeshift shelters. The thunderous sound of them collapsing filled the air. Many zombies were crushed to death, but even more continued to advance. If that zombie wave truly passed through our apartment complex, if the building collapsed, there would surely be only one path: waiting for death. We could only breathe a sigh of relief when we saw the horde of zombies standing still under the moonlight. A second family meeting was held. Zombies run as fast as normal humans. They can definitely catch up to cars. We need to pinpoint their exact location, then find a refuge area in the opposite direction. Refuge area. I mused on this word. At that moment, a buzzing sound came from outside our living room. I cautiously pulled back the curtain. A drone was approaching. On the drone, there was a plastic bag, and inside was a walkie-talkie. On the 15th floor of the opposite building was the Red Wolf. "Hello," he spoke first. "Perhaps you've noticed that it's just your family and me left in this complex now. I have a lot of supplies. If I just stay home, I'll be fine alone. But if we need to move, I hope I can join your group. As for fighting, I'm still confident." To be honest, the courage and decisiveness of the Red Wolf could indeed strengthen our group. "We can also exchange supplies," he added. My parents and I exchanged glances for a moment, then nodded in confirmation. I lowered my eyes. "Are you here to form an alliance because you know about the zombie wave?" He confirmed with a yes. "This zombie wave will probably head towards Shelter Zone 2. I was both surprised and delighted. A refuge zone had indeed been established. I had previously flown my drone to a distant area. It might be an unofficial shelter, densely populated, but without heavy armaments, almost a food storage for zombies. We might encounter the zombie wave heading that way, so we need to be prepared. These days, we have to control the drone for surveillance and use binoculars to observe the surroundings. The pressure is truly immense." We quickly formed an alliance. My parents would take the day watch, and he and I would take the night watch. Everything from food to water had to be simplified. As night fell, surprisingly, the zombie horde still moved slowly. At the same time, we noticed that some zombies at the end of the line had fallen, their joints and tissues damaged. Their brains were almost entirely consumed by maggots. It wasn't just natural decomposition, but also signs of external attack. However, we didn't know what natural principle they followed, only that if they advanced further south, that would be our danger zone. I controlled the drone from a very far distance, following them. Although the temperature had dropped to 10 degrees Celsius, I was still sweating. My forehead and hands began to tremble. Don't think I was calm in front of my parents. In reality, my heart was a tangled mess. Save me, I don't want to run. How comfortable and peaceful it is at home. My vegetable garden, my snack stash. I wasn't even this worried when checking my university exam results. Go north. Go north. I continuously muttered to myself. The roar of a heavy motorcycle engine cut through my internal cries. I flinched, my eyes glued to the screen. The moonlight was cold, the night air permeated with a chill. 3 or 4 men in military uniforms continued to fire flares forward. It had to be the army. Blinding light erupted. They had tried to create every possible sound to attract the zombies' attention. Have you ever seen zombies turn back as a group? They suspiciously turned to look at these 4 young soldiers at an angle beyond human limits. 3 seconds of silence. Immediately they roared, mouths agape, and charged towards the soldiers. Holy shit! I held my breath. The soldiers calmly adjusted their protective gear and sped their motorcycles towards the northern outskirts. But some zombies ran even faster than the heavy motorcycles. Seeing them about to catch up to the soldiers, the People's Liberation Army soldiers showed no panic. They disappeared at the end of the road until the distant night sky suddenly exploded as if it were daytime. A massive fire erupted like a soaring dragon. The next day, when my parents were on watch, I slept soundly. Upon waking, I immediately asked about the changes outside. It seems there are no more large zombie hordes. Perhaps, as Shishi said, the army led them away. This news was truly a source of encouragement. Everything was moving in a good direction, whether it was small groups of soldiers or the construction of large refugee camps. It all showed that humanity could survive even after repeated severe damage. I excitedly rolled around in bed. God knows how happy I was to see the surviving soldiers. And moreover, they carried weapons. They were always fighting, always protecting us. As long as there were no major mistakes, I believed that this zombie virus would be brought under control. One day, I opened my eyes and couldn't help but sneeze. Outside was a blanket of white. I realized it was only a few days until the Lunar New Year. Snowflakes, like soft cotton, gently fell, and everywhere I looked, there was a soft layer of snow. I leaned against the window, watching the snow for a while. My father approached, holding Wang Wang. He lifted the boy high. "Wang Wang, look at the snow." I stood in a daze for a moment, then bowed my head, rubbing my cold, red nose, and went upstairs to check on my garden. The rooftop garden had already entered its cleaning and maintenance phase. The main goal was to preserve the root system and maintain the original microbial environment. Next was to enhance soil nutrition. The compost bins from before had proven effective. Of course, kitchen waste or coffee grounds could also be used to cover the soil. After covering, another layer of sawdust was added to retain moisture and prevent insects. During my studies, I had been taught many times, studying agriculture was a great responsibility for the nation that we had to bear, fearless of hardship or dirt. But when I actually got down to it in the cornfield, I stumbled. How could I not complain? I never expected that everything I learned, all the experience of previous generations, would become life-saving in this apocalypse. Lost in my work, I suddenly remembered the statues of great figures on campus and my cultivation teacher. I wondered if my classmates had listened to my advice to stockpile enough food. When I finished everything and cleaned up, I was drenched in sweat, though it was still very cold outside. I thought to myself, I never imagined that when the zombie apocalypse came, I would be doing work exactly in my field. When I went downstairs, my parents were still gathered around Wang Wang. Children need an environment full of love, needing language and stimulation from the outside world. Home, perhaps. This was the greatest security we could have in the apocalypse. Snow continued to fall throughout the night. Outside the quiet window, I heard the sound of falling snow and branches breaking under its weight. Our whole family opened the fireplace, sitting together, eating melon seeds and chatting. We've collected a few barrels of snow already. We can boil it for laundry water, my mother calculated. The end of the year isn't far. How will we hang up the couplets? I wore soft velvet pajamas, wrapped in another blanket. It's simple, Mom. I still have paints. Cut 2 pieces of paper and ask Dad to write on them. Then the whole family can clean up, take a bath, and enjoy the new year comfortably. My mother smiled brightly. That's right. The whole family gathered together. A moment later, my mother's eyes grew a little wistful. Last year was fine. I wonder how many families can still reunite. I'll plan the New Year's Eve dinner now. I quickly changed the subject. Crispy fried mackerel, stir-fried bacon, boiled chicken. I chastised myself for not raising some live animals. I had initially thought of raising rabbits, but rabbits reproduced too quickly, and consuming grass would be a problem. We could only eat frozen meat. Wang Wang yawned widely, signaling that he wanted to sleep. My father brought thick blankets, soft mattresses, and even prepared an electric blanket to keep the small bedroom incredibly warm. I exhaled a white breath, continuing my night watch. Feeling quite bored, I chatted with Little Wolf, the Red Wolf's name in our communication. Why did you stockpile so much? Little Wolf replied slowly. I was an esports streamer. I already had a lot of stuff stockpiled, and I also followed an author who kept delaying their book releases. That person reminded me, he clarified. It was embarrassing. That was one of my alternate accounts. That account specialized in writing male fantasy novels. The reason for the delayed releases was that I often jumped between male and female genres, but knowing that my efforts had genuinely saved a life filled my heart with relief and joy. But this joy was short-lived. That evening, Little Wolf and I continued our watch. As time passed, the number of zombies in the residential area gradually decreased, so both of us felt more relaxed. At that moment, through the binoculars, a figure swiftly darted, staggering and lunging. Though still stiff, there was a difference. I felt it carried an ominous, terrifying aura. Looking closely, its entire body was tattered, its bones swollen and oozing pus. It was a zombie. It looked around once, then lunged into the apartment building's corridor. Furthermore, it didn't go straight but leaped into a first-floor window, using a tree trunk for support. Was that zombie a former high jumper? I stared in disbelief. What the hell was that? Little Wolf murmured. Immediately afterward, 2 camouflaged armored vehicles sped in, stopping before the dry fountain in the residential area. In the dark of night, it was difficult to distinguish friend from foe. We immediately adjusted our stances. A few middle-aged men exited the vehicles. I squinted, then sighed in relief. They bore red star insignias on their chests. Next, more young people emerged from the vehicles, their physiques resembling the soldiers who had once led the zombies astray. Great! They're still alive! Some sat down to identify footprints, but found no clues, so they began searching around. In the team, there was also a short-haired female soldier, her nose red, exhaling white breaths. Do you think they're chasing that zombie we just saw? 2 vehicles chasing 1 zombie. What's so special about this zombie? I said nothing more. Realizing that the current situation didn't require us to move or seek refuge, I didn't alert my parents but controlled the drone. Hearing the drone overhead, the entire group drew their weapons. Their movements were perfectly coordinated. I trusted their combat abilities. I took a deep breath. They were getting closer and closer. The drone had a phone attached to it, displaying large characters. The zombie you just saw climbed the tree near you and jumped into Building 13. Your vehicles are parked in the basement of our residential area, located at the southeast entrance. Because they were close, I even saw the female soldier's eyes widen, her mouth slightly agape in surprise, but she immediately smiled gently, "Hello." They then fully equipped their protective gear. I thought if a zombie bit that armor, it would surely break a few teeth. They brought out a police dog, and the group gathered to discuss their formation before splitting into several action teams. One team went down to the basement, another entered Building 13. My drone followed them. They carried weapons and riot gear, moving agilely along the walls. The dog unit carefully distinguished scents in the air. Nothing on the first floor, nothing on the second. Up to the 9th floor. I almost didn't dare to breathe. I truly feared encountering a zombie at the stairwell corner, and around us were uncleaned corpses. In such a tense situation, they could ascend to the 10th floor without their expressions changing. The dog suddenly stopped, halting before a door. I saw them exchange glances. With a single motion, they immediately prepared their riot gear. The atmosphere instantly solidified. The silent standoff began. The anti-theft door was violently kicked open. The zombie from earlier lunged out, but just then it got caught on a riot spear. But it was very strong. The soldier holding the spear was pushed back a few steps. Bang! Bang! Several gunshots rang out. The zombie paused for a second, but still raised its hand to attack, biting the arm of the female soldier standing nearby. She screamed, "Do it now!" A stabilizing syringe was plunged into the zombie's temple. Whether it was a sedative or something else, the zombie fell, tottering, and a few people quickly bound it with ropes. Indeed, from the beginning, they had wanted to capture it alive. The group from the 13th floor came down and regrouped. At this moment, the short-haired female soldier saw my drone was still there and turned to her commander, saying, "It's rare to find survivors in this complex. Please allow me to visit their apartment, the one with the phone case belonging to your daughter. I'll take some supplies up to them." I quickly made a phone call. "Sister, you really don't need to." The others laughed heartily, a rare moment of relaxed atmosphere. Oh, the residents are still so polite to us. So when the female soldier brought military biscuits to our door, our family of 3 was already prepared, neatly dressed, and hot tea brewed. We eagerly asked her many questions. Yes, intelligent zombies are a form of evolution. Later, they even learned to gather and set ambushes, she said. The organization's vaccine research team is working continuously. Clinical trials began last month. The zombie that stormed in today was one we had been tracking for a long time. It has strong jumping abilities and had even led an organized attack that broke through a survival base. She finished speaking, gritting her teeth in anger. Of course, they've now reached a dead end. We won't let those people's sacrifices be in vain. This live zombie will be taken back for in-depth research. Each incident was presented before us, making everyone shudder. It turned out that protective efforts had largely progressed. The safe zones had resumed basic production and life. Armed forces had also been dispatched here, preparing to begin cleanup operations. Finally, the UN research organization had also traced the virus's origin. Vaccines and inhibitors had been released. If someone was bitten on the limbs, timely vaccination had a cure rate of up to 80%. As for zombies infected in the face and brain, injecting inhibitors would lead to natural death. "Your home is like a small paradise," she said, briefly understanding our supply situation and why we hadn't gone to a shelter, then prepared to leave. I offered her a warm bag, adding some snacks. She firmly refused, waving her hand. "I cannot accept gifts from civilians." She patted my head. "Just wait for good news at home."